A lack of information around addiction and mental health issues has led to a lot of confusion. Heroes in Recovery is here to set the record straight and break the stigma through the power of storytelling and by celebrating the heroic efforts of those who walk this road of recovery every day. Our movement is built on the personal journeys of survivors, shining a spotlight on the disease of addiction and creating a global community of support. Go to heroesinrecovery.com to share your story, read hundreds of others, or join us for a 6K race. Together, we can break the stigma.
Yo, what's up? This is Jacoby from Papa Roach.
This is Ryan Lee.
This is Wes.
This is Bob Force.
This is Rich Roll, and you're listening to Sober Guy Radio.
Yo, what's up? Thank you for tuning in today. Thanks to Humans for bringing us in, and thanks to you for supporting the show. If you have questions, whether you or a loved one might need some help, you can contact Foundations Recovery Network. Their admissions coordinators are available to provide you a confidential assessment. You can do that at 1-877-714-1318. We're also going to be out at Foundations Innovations in Recovery Conference next month on April 9th through the 12th. That's a Hotel Del Coronado in San Diego. So if you want to check out any info on that, you can go to foundationsrecoverynetwork.com. You can click on events there. And then also, I wanted to mention I was excited to see the Sober Guy article, which came out in our local Vacaville Magazine yesterday. I want to give a big shout out and a big thank you to Lauren and Chris from the Vacaville Magazine, as well as Ryan Bates Photography for coming to the house, taking some photos for the article. And then, of course, Donna Hoover. She really did an amazing job of writing up the article and letting me share some of my story, and also providing some great recovery resources for those out there in our community. So big thanks to them over at Vacaville Magazine. If you want to check it out, you can go to www.vacamag.com. And now, without further ado, we're going to get to the big homie, Tim Stoddart. What's up, Tim? How are you?
Hey, Shane. What's up, buddy?
Yeah, it's nice to have you back on the show, man. It's been a while since we got to chat. And I just learned, well, real quick, too, let me give a quick intro for those of you who might not know who Tim is. Tim's an entrepreneur. He's an addiction recovery advocate, and he's also a fitness fanatic. He was born and raised in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, to a hardworking and loving family. And one thing I do know about Tim, he has definitely always had a passion for hard work and self-improvement. He's the founder and CEO of Stasi Inc. and also Sober Nation and the Sober Podcast Network, New Life Clothing. You have all kinds of projects going on. You're a busy dude, man. So what's going on, man? To the Super Bowl champion Philadelphia Eagles, by the way. Congrats on that.
It doesn't get old to hear that, man. It really doesn't. Everywhere I go, I was just in Nashville, I guess last weekend, and the first thing I did when they won is I bought my Super Bowl champions hat. It's the very first thing I did. And everywhere I went in Nashville, people were honestly just coming up to me and like grabbing me by the shoulders, just saying like, "Oh my God, congratulations. Like, I'm so happy for you." Because it was like you and I were talking before the podcast, like people like to portray this picture of Philadelphia, but it's like a beautiful, beautiful city. Yeah. And there's tons of art and food and like music around every corner, and the architecture and like the buildings and just the vibe you get when you walk around. Like it's not, it's a working class city, definitely, which is why like I think I feel so at home there. But at the same time, like it's just a beautiful place, man. And God, it meant so much to me and like my family and just everybody there. Like my whole life, I've been dying for the Eagles to win it, So I'm not sick of talking about it yet. I don't know if I ever will be, and like I'll just leave you on that before I really start going off on like a fucking tirade, No,
it's all good, man. It's been a long time for the Eagles, and I know we got to go. So I was telling you before we started, me and like 7 or 8 of my homies, we went out there in October, and man, like just like you're saying, I had never been there before. I've pretty much only been on the West Coast my whole life. So that was like my first official trip out to the east side of the country. And Dude, we had so much fun. Everyone was so fucking cool. Like just a great melting pot of different cultures and people, and just the sports. We went to a Phillies game. We didn't get to hit an Eagles game because they were out of town.
Phillies games are great too, though.
Dude, we had a blast, bro. I brought my boy back, my son, a little Phillies hat. Dude, and I've been rocking the Phillies hat out here. I had a couple people try to give me some shit like, oh, you're an A's fan. I'm like, man, like I can wear like whatever the fuck I want here. And especially I got to represent some Philadelphia. So we had a blast, man.
Thanks. Yeah, it was, I miss it. I miss the people more than anything. I miss the mentality, like how you introduced me, with hardworking. I don't necessarily like, I guess I wear that as like a badge of honor, but I don't look at myself as like I'm this special, like hardworking type guy. I just look at it like everybody is that way. Like it's just part of like the mindset. It's also granted like the how do you call it? The history behind Philadelphia has a lot to do with Quakerism and like Protestantism and like the Protestant work ethic and stuff. So there's like some cultural significance there. But it's just really like in our bones, like the whole entire city. You wake up early and you work hard and you eat dinner with your family, and it's a cool place, man. So I appreciate the love. Like, thank you.
Oh yeah, man.
It means so much.
Well, just the history alone. I mean, that was a big part of why we went, was to go see, some of the landmarks and take some tours and walk around the city. And some of that, like you had mentioned, the architecture there is absolutely amazing. Like cool. some of the stuff. Yeah. And, the other thing too, I wanted to ask you, so us California boys out here, man, I gotta be real. We tried to act like what we knew about like some Philly sandwiches, right? Like we wanted to know what was up. We stayed right by Jim's, which was on like South 4th, I think. Yeah. That was a dope little spot too. A bunch of tattoo shops and cool little vintage, like antique shops and all kinds of cool stuff. But, where's the spot to go for like the authentic Philly? Like what's the number one hidden gem?
Jim's is a good spot.
Yeah.
Jim's is definitely a good spot. And South Street's a blast. On 4th and South is Jim's, and one block east of that is a little place called the TLA, the Theater of Living Arts, I think. And when I was growing up, I used to play a bunch of music, and when we would play shows at the TLA, it was always like a really fun thing. So just that whole, and there's a pizza shop on 2nd and South called Lorenzo's, from like 2nd and South to like 8th and South. Those blocks is just a really, really cool time. So I'm glad you got to see that. My spot, so I was born in Chestnut Hill, and my grandparents lived in a neighborhood called Mount Airy, which is like northwest Philly. Okay. And in that area, Roxborough, there's a place called D'Alessandro's, which I've gone to, I mean, always, because my mom still lives in that area in Roxborough. Nice. So yeah, that's the place I go. And it's great being in there. Like you can go there on a Saturday, and it's a tiny little sandwich shop, just like you would picture, probably like the size of the living room. And there's like 30, 40 people packed in there. And it's the same like Italian family and the same loud Italian woman that's just like running the spot, like screaming out names and like real fast with the money and like, here you go, thank you, baby, thank you, baby, thank you, baby. And it's great, man. I feel so at home there. If you get a cheesesteak with crushed hot peppers and like a Stewart's cream soda.
Oh, damn. that sounds good right now.
I'm telling you.
Stewart's, man. You're dropping the Stewart's. I love it.
Yep.
So let's so another thing actually I wanted to mention too, to kind of switch gears here. Sober Nation, man, you guys have been around for a long time. And also wanted to say thank you too. I know I've told you this before, I think, but I don't know officially on a podcast or anything like that. But you guys were really one of the first ones who Sober Guy kind of partnered with. You and I kind of met, started talking, and picked us up as a official sponsor, and we just started getting to know each other a little bit and working together and stuff. So I just want to say thanks for that, man. And I also wanted to ask what Sober Nation, what that platform's up to. And I know you got a couple different projects, and we'll get into all of them, but I thought maybe we could start there.
Yeah, that's a good place to start. And it's funny because when people talk about all the things, it sounds, I mean, it's big, there's a lot going on, but it sounds like some huge giant machine. Really, like if you're in the office every day, you'll see that it's all pretty simple, and really it's all like under one thing. Yeah. It's just, there's kind of different websites for like different, I I don't know, genres or like styles, so like soberpodcast.com is the same thing as sobernation.com, except instead of written articles, we just post audio content.
Got it.
And on that note, buddy, like seriously, you don't have to thank me. I always like to say that the thing that I did well to make Sober Nation popular was I didn't make it like about me. I just really like thought like if I could put a platform together in which this like real passionate community can kind of get together and just share their own stuff, then it's almost like, in like strict digital marketing sense, like I'm leveraging other people's content to grow like my own brand, but from like a personal standpoint, I always thought it was just really cool that way, because when you get to see, like a guy like yourself who just has something to say and like an idea, and then you watch it sort of turn into something, I think that's just like, I think it's just a really cool thing. And I get just as much, fulfillment out of like the success of that as I do from the success of like the whole entire operation put together, but yeah, dude, like the podcasts have been great, and it's been cool to watch it grow. It's been cool because when you and I first started talking a couple of years ago, I remember one of the things that I said was that I think audio is like a perfect format for people to talk about recovery, because that's basically what like recovery is, right? It's people telling their stories. And, like, I guess pat on the back, we definitely were right about that, because since then there's been like an explosion of
it's crazy
recovery podcasts. It's out of control. Yeah. I can't even keep up with them. Every day there's another email of someone like trying to get on board. I'm just like,
it's a lot of work, man. I mean, I think,
it is.
A lot of people don't get to see the back end of different operations, whether it's podcasting or blogging or just in that space alone. And there's so many different elements and so many branches of the tree per se, or whatever, that go into it. And it really takes a lot of dedication and heart. And I know for me, that's one of the big things that's helped me in my recovery and staying sober and staying motivated is being passionate about something. And, I mean, that's been huge. And before I forget too, one of the other things you touched on, I wanted to point out is when you're talking about Sober Nation and not making it about you and making it more about community. Man, I know through this little journey for me, the longer that that I continue to go on, the more that I learn, it's less about me. Like stuff just makes so much more sense now, cause like in the beginning of it, it's like, well, when you're using or drinking or whatever, you're so selfish. And then now you got to be selfish again, because you got to get sober. And so you got to block everything out and stay focused on that. And now I got to transition all that selfishness from just a human being standpoint and learn like how to not be a selfish prick. You know what I mean? And so it's crazy, man. It's a whole little process. And, keeping in line with back to the passionate thing, these different projects from Sober Nation, New Life Clothing, you got your own podcast now, which I want to talk about, which I think is really cool. So, let me pass it back to you and have you hit on some of those things.
Yeah. Well, I'm really lucky that, I hired a girl named Tori who like, I'm terrible at the organizational type aspects.
Yeah.
I'm pretty organized, but like I get lost in when there's a million things flying at me, like I just lose track of them all. And Tori like has really, really, really helped, with just in terms of she's just tight. You know what I mean? Like she's just really tight. Nothing slips by her. So she's been a huge help. New Life Clothing, man, like I'm always pretty honest about this. Till this day, I think I've honestly made like $400 from the whole thing out of like 4 years. But like, really, I just think it's cool. Like, I don't even know how to say it. Like, it's just cool to put these designs together, and it's a hobby more than anything. And it's cool. It's like, cool. Yeah, I enjoy the fact that I guess I can make like $100 a year from a hobby, right? Like not a lot of people can say that, but it's not the reason why I've kept doing it. Like, believe me. In fact, anytime I've tried to turn New Life into like a business and like get serious about it, it ended up just stressing me out. And then I was like, I don't want to fucking do this anymore. So, that's kind of just, it just stays there really. I don't put a whole lot of time into it. With Sober Nation, I honestly haven't really talked about this, and this was like why I approached you about getting on the podcast again. It's started becoming like overwhelming, and with the amount that I had to write and all the interaction with people and feeling like personally responsible for the brand, like that's why Tori came involved, because it was sucking me up, man, and like my whole entire life was nothing other than talking to people about their addiction and like talking to people about finding help. And then I would go home and like be expected to still do my own recovery,
It's tough.
And it just took it all out of me. So, truth be told, the reason why I started getting into a lot of my personal stuff and started sort of just allocating a lot of that work was because it was just, I don't want to say it was eating away at me. Like I still enjoyed doing it, but it was turning into something that it got big because it was something that was celebrated. Yeah. And then more it turned into work and it lost like the celebration, the less it became like what it was that made it popular in the first place. You know what I'm trying to say? So I had to really like get it back to that and just sort of get the fuck out of the way for a little bit. And plus because like I'm a writer, out of all the online marketing things that I like to mess with, like at the foundation of it all has always been just me writing. That's where like I got my start from. And so I was losing my passion for writing and I just had to really like pull away from it, put the day-to-day in somebody else's hand, like trust somebody, that like,
and that's hard
hey,
to
look,
do,
I have
man.
my own perfect way of doing this, but like, I'm going to trust you to do it. And, I'm really glad I did, dude. Like, I'm really glad I did. And now I feel, when I sent you that email, like, hey, look, man, I'm ready to kind of get back and start talking about some of these things again. And, I mean, shit, I don't know. I'm on a tangent now.
No. That all of that was good, man, and it's all it all makes sense. And I think what you're describing too, at least how I understand it, because I've experienced some of the same shit between being a dad and being a husband and trying to do work in the corporate world and then operate sober guy and like all these different hats that I have to wear. That's how I always describe it. Like, damn, I got to put my work hat on today. Okay, cool. Now I'm gonna put my baseball hat on today or whatever it is. My dad hat, the husband hat. It's crazy sometimes, and it's burnout, really. Like it's just a straight burnout, and you feel that passion like getting sucked out of you to where it's just work. You know what I mean? And that's a tough thing to pull out of too, man. It definitely takes some time and some work. So I'm super stoked for you that number one, you're able to recognize it. That's a big part in just recovery. I think in general is recognizing the shit that we're doing. I think so too. And then, dude, I admire the hell out of the fact of being able to hand over your baby like that. Your work. That's not an easy thing to do. And, like you said, we have a certain way we want to do shit. And like a little bit difference can like really mess with your mind, It's
more your mind, because the reality is that like if you showed the two sides to other people, they probably wouldn't be able to tell the difference.
Yeah.
But for me, it's like, I'm just naturally like an obsessive person, by like how I am. So I just obsess over these things. But like I said, I'm really glad like Tori's been managing all the podcasts and she's been managing the blogs and dealing with the writers, and I've just sort of been able to take like a not a backseat, because I'm definitely very involved, but more overseer.
Well, I was gonna say too, like it seems to me like you've been able to get back into being a creator again. Not that you weren't always creating, but you were creating, but at the same time, it sounds like you're getting overshadowed by all this admin and like just straight fucking work. And that's what I was saying earlier. There's so much work on the back end. Now, if you're able to kind of step back, you're an artist, bro. I mean, that's like, you're a writer, like you're an artist, dude. Like you create, like a lot of us in recovery are. Like now you have some time to sit back and like do some of the shit that you're really enjoying. That's really cool to see, man.
Thank you. It's felt good. And also like just, I don't know, waking up on a Saturday and just being like, I'm going to go to the park instead of going right on my computer or going to the beach. I mean, 2017 was a really interesting year for me in a lot of ways, but last year it was the first time, like really since I got sober, that I was able to just not be so intense about something.
Yeah.
Because that helped me. You know, a lot of people say that like you can't replace one addiction with another, and I guess that's probably true. But in a way, it really helped me to have something where like I could take this crazy obsessive focus that I have and take it away from destructive type shit and put it towards something that like was positive. And I think for me, it just took 6-7 years to finally be able to get to a point where it's like, you know what, man, like I'm okay. You know, like it's okay. You can relax a little. That's helped. I mean, you mentioned
too that I can't remember if it was in an email that we talked real quick, but that you kind of took a break from social media and stuff too, man. Was that like a huge help? I see, like, I haven't even said this yet to anybody yet, but I deleted my Facebook like a week and a half ago because I couldn't fucking take it anymore, bro. I was just like, I still have Instagram, you know, I'm not trying to be high and mighty, like I'm fucking over it, but like the Facebook in general was driving me nuts, dude. And I said, you know what? I'm done with this shit. What about you? I mean, what was your take on that? Yeah.
It's too funny, man. Yeah, I actually deleted it and it was hard.
Yeah.
I thought about it and like ruminated over it for months because at this point it's not just so much an interaction tool. Like, you know, there's all my pictures and memories and stuff. But man, it came down to two things really. One was just straight value. I kept asking myself like, what value is this bringing to my life? Both from a personal standpoint and from like an online marketing standpoint, you know? And the more and more Facebook became this endless stream of kind of nonsense, the less it was turning into like an actual asset in which I could spread my message. Because now, you know, a quick story. I won't get too much into it, but when I first started Sober Nation, there was a point where we had like 20,000 followers, and I'm like, oh my God, we made it, you know? Yeah. But the algorithm at that time was a lot different, where I could post something to my 20,000 followers, and like they would pretty much all see it. And it was great because, like, as you said, as a writer, like I would write this stuff, and it would get like thousands and thousands of hits, and I would get comments and shit. Now the Sober Nation Facebook page has like 300,000 followers, and like I can post something and it hardly touches anybody.
Dude, that is crazy, man.
Yeah, like it hardly touches anyone. So just from like a pragmatic marketing standpoint, it lost value there.
Yeah.
But in terms of like value from my life, God, I don't know. It's like little dopamine hits, right? Like you see the little red notification and you can't not click on it.
They talked about that. I don't know if you saw those interviews with it wasn't Zuckerberg, but there was a couple of other guys. Yeah, they did those interviews and they talked about how they selectively knew that beforehand or picked those, you know, that type of setup for those dopamine hits to get people addicted to it, to get people basically in this virtual space. And that really rubbed me the wrong way. I'd already kind of had an idea about that, but to actually see those guys start talking about it out in the open, that I didn't like that. I think a lot of people felt like that.
I didn't like that either, but I guess in a way I kind of already knew that was the case and just sort of accepted it. The real deal breaker for me was, excuse me, about 2 months ago, I took this writing course and it was really hard. It was really intense. And I've never taken a course before. Like I'm not like educated at all. And even online education, like, I don't know, maybe it's my ego. I don't like to listen to people. I took this course and it was from this guy named Seth Godin, who's like a real world-renowned marketer. And he's written a shit ton of books and I've read a bunch of them. And in the course, they sent me a bunch of reading material. And there were two in particular. Actually, hold on, I can turn around. Hold on one second.
All right.
It was this one called The War of Art by Stephen Pressfield. Really blew me away. And then right after I read this one. It's called Lynchpin. This one's actually by Seth Godin. And after reading this book and then transitioning into this book, there's this line in Lynchpin where he talks about things that never end, because the purpose of the course and of that book is about creating something and then publishing it, because our minds, he calls it our lizard brain, our amygdala, the survivalist mentality of us still wants to be safe. And there's like a real thing in like where people are looking at us, like public speaking, and we see that and we think danger, danger, danger.
Yeah.
And it's like a fear of putting your art out there, which is really rooted like evolutionary, which is like, being away from the pack. And so without getting too heady, he said that the thing that holds most people back is that they create stuff, but they don't actually ship it. He calls it. They don't actually publish it. And instead what they do is they focus on things that never end, because if something never ends, then there's never actually a decision to like put it out there.
Yeah.
Right. And Facebook and Twitter and Instagram, the whole premise of them is just they never fucking end. Like there's never like an actual decision where you say, this is something I made, and that it has like an impact on the earth.
It's done.
And it's done, and people feel it.
Yeah.
Instead it's the opposite, where it's just like, you're like a drone just sort of staring at this screen that never ends. Right. And as soon as I had that whole like encompassing experience, and when I just read that little paragraph about things that never end, and I realized like there's no end in sight for this. Like I can either delete it now, or I can keep thinking about deleting it forever because it's never going to change.
It's like you're just getting carried off into this black hole of fucking nonsense. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like just like you said, every day, just scrolling through. I mean, I would find myself doing it and not even know. It's almost robotic. You get in like a robotic state where it's just like you pick it up and you go. But one thing that's funny about that is, man, I'm feeling a little bit good right now since you said that, because I'm equating this to, for years, my wife, and we don't watch a lot of TV anymore, but when we used to watch series, I'll give you an example, like Lost, right? Do you remember when Lost came out? It was like this huge craze, and it's one of the kind of, I guess, one of the earlier series where it just kept, it was fucking ongoing forever. And I stopped at about like the third or fourth season. I said, I can't take this anymore. Like, I need an ending. Like, give me something that has a fucking ending in it. I want to know what happened. And I want to see something. I want a beginning. I want a middle. I want to end. I don't want to be lost in space, getting drug on through the mud, trying to figure out what happens in, this season, next season. And I think it's a kind of a similar concept, like I want to see that shit happen. It's
like The Walking Dead. The Walking Dead's done that.
Yeah. They drag it out.
There's just no end in sight, but I don't know. Like I said, I have a propensity to like overthink things. So I can kind of like really ramble on with that concept and see like analogies everywhere. But for me, and particularly how it dealt with like social media in my life, there's no question that like it's made my life better.
Yeah.
I've read like because I've always been a reader, and like I noticed that I stopped reading. I've read like 4 books since I deleted it. I've been writing in my personal site every morning. It's like the first thing I do. I plug my phone in away from my bed, so that like I don't have this glow around me. I'm telling you, man, but I don't think we're the only ones. I think society is really starting to catch on to it.
I do too.
I see it happen a lot where people are just kind of like, I don't think this is really helping me anymore.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. And I know friends and family who have been just completely divided by it too, with all of the just nonsense going on about people's different opinions on stuff and all that stuff. That was a whole nother element to it. But yeah, I'm with you, bro. It's been a good thing. Like I don't miss it. I'm not going back to it. Like I'm done with it. And I am finding myself doing a little bit more of time allotted things. I got to be honest though, I'm still on my phone and my computer a lot because I work. That's my work I do. But I do notice a difference in like being a little bit not as dialed into it, I guess, being able to disconnect. What about the podcast for you, man? I thought that was super cool that you launched that. And how's that been going?
It's been one of the biggest adventures and one of the biggest struggles really in like my whole creative outlet. One, the technological side behind it was like a real struggle for me. Like now I notice it. Like the first thing that happened when this video popped up, I'm like, oh man, like look, he's got a pop protector on his mic. Like maybe I should get one of them.
The little little things.
It was hard to set it up, but man, it's been so cool. I've I went back and forth. Like at first I was just having conversations with people and I was thinking like, what's my direction? Do I want to stick to like internet marketing type theme? But there's already so many of them out, and I thought about doing the recovery theme, but then I was like, I don't want to get sucked back into that same thing again. Or like everything I talk about is about recovery. So then what I started doing is just doing these little like 10-minute monologues that I would do where like I would pick an idea and that was cool. And like, I started getting some downloads and I enjoyed doing it. But really the thing that made up my mind is I found that I was getting so much value out of actually sitting down and having like real conversations with people for like an hour, like again, with no cell phone and no eavesdropping on like conversations at the dinner table around you, just like one-on-one with another person. And I was like really enjoying that process. So
that's cool, man.
I'm sticking with that now.
Yeah, it's cool to hear you kind of point that out too. And because I don't know that I've ever really thought about it like that, because one thing I have thought about is that the conversation is becoming like a dying thing. It seems like, at least, or definitely it's not as relevant as it used to be, a family dinner, stuff like that, with all the technology distractions. But damn, I was going to ask you something else and I totally just blew my mind out right now. It was about the podcast, but anyways, hopefully it'll come back to me. But that's cool though. So you're getting some good guests and you're having I like the monologue ones too. I think it gives me, like when I do some of those, it gives me an example. I call it just puking on the mic, just letting some of my thoughts and stuff, roll out. That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, I was, cause with podcasts, I had like so little experience that I was basically just like observing other people and seeing what they were doing. And Mike Rowe, I don't know if you follow him at all, the guy from Dirty Jobs.
Yeah, I love that.
He's really great. And he's got a phenomenal podcast. It's called The Way I Heard It. And
love that show.
Oh, dude, it's so good. Yeah. And so then I was thinking I can do that. But then when I was listening back to him, I mean, Mike Rowe has been like doing narration and like storytelling his whole entire career. So I don't know. And maybe he's got like a deeper, like better voice than I do. so like, I was listening to him do it and then me do it. I was like, like it just, that shit ain't on the same level.
His voice, man, is just like, it's so authentic and it is very baritone. Like it makes you just, you're just encompassed in the story, like right out of the gate. And he's a great storyteller. And one other thing I like too about that show is that he kept it, like 10 minutes. And so attention spans these days, we all know are short sometimes, and he's throwing a story in there. I just remembered what I was going to tell you real quick too.
Cool. I knew it was going to happen, by the
way. Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to kind of mention was, you said getting burnout and talking about recovery like all the time, dude. And it's so funny you brought that up because I've thought about this a lot lately and I haven't really talked much about it, but I feel like there's a life to live and everything and I want to be careful what I say here because especially to somebody who's new into recovery might be listening to this, like everything doesn't have to revolve around recovery, but at the same time, it does in a sense, like especially if you're new, like I want to stay dialed into it, but there's other things I want to do in life. Besides that, I want to be Shane. Like I want to be me. I want to experience other things. And yet still there's a huge part of my life that is that and is me, but there's also a huge part that wants to, there's still fun out there to be had, whether you're in recovery or not, is I guess what I'm getting at. So I was just kind of curious if you wanted to dive into that a little bit.
Dude, that's been a struggle for years for me. I don't want to say struggle, like it's not that dramatic, but it's that whole idea has taken up a lot of space in my brain.
Yeah.
Because it's almost like I forget the word. It's difficult because you say I have all of this other stuff that isn't recovery, but you're not going to have any of the other stuff without recovery. So like they're both dependent on each other. Like you have to sort of keep sobriety and recovery first because without it, you don't have the opportunity to do the other shit. But like now that you do have the opportunity to do all the other shit, you don't want to be like buried in there all the time. So I get that for sure. I think what has helped me and I don't want to kind of beat the point home. Maybe it's just like relevant, but I think what really helped me was part of that book, The War of Art. He really talked about having the courage to do the things inside of you for no other reason other than it's what makes you feel good. And especially as like a marketer, like a lot of the art I create in the back of my mind, I'm thinking like, how can I leverage this content to create something,
So by that, you're setting expectations and you have this, a different thing other than just creating the content.
Than just creating it. Yeah. And I don't know, like that whole idea I found sort of trickling into all the other aspects of my life as well, because that same thing is true with my recovery. And granted, like you said, you have to be careful saying these things because I had 8 years on March 4th.
Congrats, bro. That's awesome.
Thank you. It was a big milestone. So like my perspective on it now is a lot different than I was when I was like in my first year, In your first year, dog, like just get it done. Just do nothing but go to meetings if that's your deal, or therapy or whatever your deal is. Like do nothing but do that, because like it will get easier and you just have to take it on faith that like it's going to get easier. But I know when I was getting sober, like my biggest fear hands down was that I was going to be bored, like without question. That was like the thing that I was like, what the fuck? I'd rather die at 40 and like have a good time than die at 80 and just be miserable and be bored my whole life. Because at that point I was thinking, like I'll make it to 30 maybe if I'm lucky. But you just almost have to believe that as time goes on and as like you gain some more experience, like these thoughts and these little puzzles that we have in our head, like they're going to work themselves out.
Yeah.
You just keep kind of fucking doing it. You just keep moving forward and you keep experimenting with new things and be like, oh, that didn't work out so well. Let me try it a different way. And then maybe doing it this. It'd be like, so what's worked out for me is when you talk about doing my art and not making it all about recovery, like through trial and error, sometimes when I write my morning article, I got something on my mind that's like kind of sobriety related.
Yeah.
And so I just fucking write about it. And then sometimes I have something else, like this morning's article was all about Stephen Hawking because I'm just really into physics and like the stars in the universe. And I have been when I was a kid. So you know what? Like I just write about it because that's what like my heart is telling me to do. So I think as long as you follow your heart, as like cliche as that is, you'll get to where you're going.
Yeah. So in other words, it's super organic for you, like what you're feeling.
Sure.
And I think that's how you get some of the realest shit too, that you find that stuff that's actually real and relatable because it's not forced. It's just something that comes up and man, this is how I'm feeling right now. So like you said, maybe one day it's about recovery, maybe another day it's not. What else are you up to? Like other projects or just kind of kicking back or, what's going on in Tim's world right now?
No more projects for me, dude. I got engaged.
Oh, nice, bro. Congrats. I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's,
hell yeah.
I've never really been, cause when I met my fiance, one of the first things I did when I talked to my dad, I was like, I finally feel like one of those giddy fucking kids in those stupid romantic comedy movies. So you're like, look at this loser. You know what I mean? I'm like that. I didn't know that this was like a real thing.
Yeah.
And man, she's the coolest. Like for real. I super, super lucked out. I mean, there's no question about it. I lucked out. And she moved in and we're planning on getting married soon. I've found that planning weddings is like real annoying,
bro. Yeah.
And I got a huge family and she's got a huge family. And it's just kind of one of these things. It's like, well, I guess we got to figure this out somehow. And then like we start chipping along and then we both kind of get like really overwhelmed with it. Yeah. And it's like,
well, then it's like,
do this anymore.
Yeah. And it's like, well, if we invite Aunt Irene, then we got to invite Uncle Ed, and Uncle Ed will get pissed if Uncle, you know what I mean? There's like that whole like dynamic with big families and stuff and friends too. I mean, so you got both big families and then you got to add in all the friends. It's a lot, man. It definitely is.
and we got big families. I mean, and she's got, I mean, all right, you know what? On that note, though, they're all from New England, and you can imagine the heat I was in before that Super Bowl. And you know what, though, Shane, I didn't say a word.
That's
kept
good.
it cool.
That's smart.
You know what I mean? I kept it cool, but man, that felt good.
Oh yeah, that's all right. You got your Eagles hat on right now, so you're good to go. You know,
Always.
represent. So what's next, man? I mean, just you're getting married sometime soon. Keeping it chill, dude. I like that. I like the organic approach. I really got to say, and I've been through that a couple of times myself, and having to just kind of step back and say, you know what, like there's a higher power than me, and you know I'm just gonna kind of let that weight off of my shoulders, and let my higher power handle it, because I can't. You know what I mean? And when I'm trying to, that's when, to go back to what we were talking about, that anxiety and like just it's not fun. I don't want to live like that. You know what I mean? Like shit will just work
stressful.
out just how it's supposed to. And keeping that attitude for me has been a huge help.
I think it's a huge help for everyone. And I think that people like you and I, like, we've been really, really blessed. I mean, aside from recovery, like the perspective and the lessons that I've learned from that whole recovery process, I mean, I think everybody, whether they're in recovery or not, can really get a lot from just giving up that control that like we don't actually have.
Yeah.
You know, like we're grabbing at this thing that doesn't exist. I mean, my sponsor has always said it, and he said a lot of things to me, but basically he could have repeated this one thing over and over again and got me to the same spot. And it was just all about control, because the only thing you can control is what you do, and like that's it.
Yeah.
Like anybody else. And then he would always kind of say, like, you can kind of control what you think, but not really. He was like, all you can control is what you do.
Yeah.
And so if I just make sure that like I focus on like my actions, and I try my best to keep my monkey brain from taking me, who knows where it'll take me. If I just keep doing the right thing, man, like that's why it's so tough to say that you got to keep it on faith, because there's no other way to learn that lesson other than to just continuously do the right thing and then see for yourself that like good things happen. Like it's so easy to say that to people, especially when they're first coming around, but it's kind of like when you were a kid and you never listened to your dad, and then you get old and you're like, fuck man, like my dad was right the whole time.
Yeah.
You know,
How did he know?
Yeah. It's kind of one of those things, but yeah, I mean, no more projects for me, dude. I have a bad habit of taking on more than I can chew. And I really, really want Sober Nation to like, I don't even want to say to grow, because it's not like I have some expectation of like what I want it to be. I just know I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
That's basically what it is. Like that thing, that itch, whatever it is I'm trying to scratch, I'm not done yet. Like we're working a lot with colleges now, just because so many of the kids that are having problems are coming out of school and, you know, losing all their tuition money after like 2.5 years of taking out student loans and never actually getting a degree, you know? So I think that's some real shit that we're working on, but I'm just chasing the bone, man.
Yeah, that's cool, man. No, I think, I know this is, I mean, completely different topic, but I think it's still relevant, especially with the, you know, what you just mentioned, a lot of the college kids having issues. I'm not hating on college, but the debt cycle that's set up for kids to fail nowadays by going and getting in massive amounts of debt and then getting out and not being able to find a job to even repay that debt. I don't know what the percentages are, you know, offhand, but I know that's a huge issue. And then you couple in, you know, the amount of, acceptability within partying and drugs and alcohol and stuff, dude. It's just a recipe for disaster, man. And it's really sad, dude. It's really, are you guys going in? Are you speaking, or what are you guys doing to kind of help in that?
No, the biggest thing we're doing right now, and to piggyback off that, like you don't even have to get me started with that, dude. Like
feel free.
I don't even like hiring kids from college because I feel bad for them, because they have this, they have this one perception of the world, and then you throw them into the real world, and it's just like, dude, I'm sorry you spent all that money, but basically unlearn everything that they taught you, because like I'll show you how to actually do it. So aside from that, and like the debt cycle, and on that note, there's a fascinating documentary called The Ivory Tower. If you've never watched it, it'll blow your mind when you see the debt cycle, and it actually explains why tuition has become so inflated, because basically colleges have to compete not for the best education, but the best like college experience. So I think Ohio State, there's the craziest one where they built some like $10 million rock climbing wall. And then the only reason they did it was so that they can give tours to their freshmen and be like, look what we have. And then there's like these actual like real schools that are teaching important shit that are just regular tuition dollars, like $10,000 a year or something like that. And they're doing just fine. But Ohio State's charging kids like $80,000 a year. So anyway,
here's a rock wall. Come check it out.
Yeah. But so what we're doing now, I spoke. I went to Madison, Wisconsin to speak out there. There's some really, really cool people in that school who maybe I'll send you some links afterwards and you can put them in the show notes because they were really good to me. But for the most part, we built a directory on Sober Nation, which is a directory of all the collegiate recovery programs across the country. So colleges are really starting to adopt like recovery housing and just recovery communities so that they give a place for kids in sobriety to actually be able to like socialize and have other options other than just like go to a frat party. But that's cool. I mean, truth be told, they still have a long ways to go because we find that like a lot of the colleges just want to solve everything through like bureaucracy kind of. And they're really big, like to make things happen at colleges, like you have to go through a lot of people and it's just a long process and that's just sort of the way it is. But I really do think that for the most part, like all of the colleges, at least that we've spoken to, are working really, really hard to try to figure that out.
That's cool.
Like they're doing the best they can. I think that there's a lot of issues with it, but in terms of like providing resources and providing like outlets and like sober activities or whatever they're doing, they're trying their hardest.
Yeah, that's cool, man. It's cool that you're kind of getting into that space too, though, because it is such an important space to be in and have good people involved who have kind of been through some of that same stuff that some of the kids are going through. It's. I
feel good about that, but I guess if I'm going on both sides, I think the place where I'm still really, really coming up short is just getting involved with cities. I don't know quite how to crack that, because it's like most of my addiction was in inner cities, especially in like North Philadelphia. So I know that there's like this whole other population that just because they're not, like suburban kids that are dying from painkillers, it doesn't mean that they're not dealing with like some real problems. And it's just difficult because from my perspective, I mean, what we do is all internet based. So like just a lot of the online resources don't exist for urban populations the same way that they do for other places. So I'm struggling with that one, man. I think about it a lot. I don't know how to do it, honestly.
Well, kind of, I feel like you're kind of alluding to just, I mean, because we can sit behind the computer all day and talk about this shit, but what you're saying is really getting out in the street and getting out there and actually talking to folks and, just being available, I guess, more or less, right? In the communities, no matter where it's at, your local community or whatever. I mean, I'm with you, bro. That's a huge thing. And I've kind of been having a lot of thoughts about that and trying to do a little bit more, at least in my community here, to show a little bit more face. It ain't much, but I can feel it kind of shifting that way, if that makes sense. So hopefully in the next 5-10 years, it starts to go more that way. I think the first step was deleting Facebook too. But that, I'm with you, man. Like, there's some bigger issues out there than just on the internet too, for sure.
Yeah, but I think you hit it right. Like the more I think about it, the more that it becomes clear to me that the only way to get involved with more like insulated local communities is on the ground level.
Yeah.
You know, I don't necessarily have to be like, what's the word? An evangelist, maybe. Like, I don't have to be like this spokesperson for just recovery across the country. You know, like, I think cities need to do a better job of like actually getting, you know, who does a great job of it? I'll give him a shout out, and I should put you in touch with him because he'd be great. There's a guy named Devin Reeves in Philadelphia, and he's just a buddy of mine, but man, like, sometimes I look at the work he's doing and I don't feel, it's not insecure. I feel like the work that he does with actual people more so, like, in a lot of ways it means more than writing blog posts, you know, and I wish that there was a way to put people like Devin and people that are just like really in it, like dealing with people and like hugging people, you know. I wish there was a way that I could shine some more light on them. So I'll put you in touch with Devin.
I would love that, man. Cool. That'd be awesome, bro. I'd love to hear about some of the work he's doing, and kind of get what you're saying though, like a blog post, a podcast, this digital platform, it can reach a massive amount of people. And that's a good thing. But at the same time, maybe like in the communities where it's on the ground level, you're not affecting as many people per se, but possibly you're affecting them more because you're having those human experiences one-on-one. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, so it's a great point, man. Yeah, it's a good point.
Maybe. And I don't have the answer by any means, but I think about it a lot.
Yeah. Yeah, man. I see the big book in the background. That's awesome there. I like that. I just spotted that right there. Isn't that it?
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Right here?
Yeah, right there. There it is.
That's it.
Page 86. That's my favorite page. I can't recite it or anything, but yeah, it's got a lot of stuff on there. Well, cool, man. We can wrap this thing up, man. This has been great, dude. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, me too.
You know, I like how this is the kind of conversations that I'm really enjoying these days is like, you know, let's hit on some recovery stuff. Let's talk about it a little bit, but let's just chat like two homies and have a good convo. You know what I'm saying? It doesn't have to be so focused around, you know, every little pinpoint is recovery. So thank you, man. Thank you for being open and honest and sharing what you're doing. Where, if anyone out there listening or watching, wants to reach out to you or check out any of the projects you're working on, Sober Nation, where can they do that?
Yeah, well, SoberNation.com is obviously the big one, but the site that I'm referring to, which is my site, timstodds.com, TIMSTODZ, timstodds.com. It's really simple. It's all white pages with just words on it. It's super focused on my writing, but if you go to timstodds.fm, that's my podcast, and that will basically just redirect you to like the podcast category on timstodds.com. So you can see it all if you just go to timstodds.com.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Cool. Yeah, absolutely, man. And we'll put that in the show notes. And man, dude, thanks for coming on the show today, bro. It was really great to talk to you too.
Thanks, Shane.